Welcome to the Solid Verbal. And now, Dan and Ty.
Dan Rubenstein, last episode was ACC Part 1, where we did the big picture thing, looked at contender tiers, talked about storylines, had a little bit of fun with experimental ice cream thing. I don't know if that's for me, but alas, we are back. Today it is part 1 of our ACC team preview. So what we did last episode, higher level. Today we are diving in on about half of the conference. We're going to do the contender tier at the very top, the rebuilding tier at the bottom. Next episode will be all the wild cards that we talked about last episode.
Yes.
That are sort of bunched up in the middle. Does that sound good to you? Sound like a plan, sir?
Our delicious ham episode is part 3. You're a ham. You're delicious. A little bit mysterious, but we're very excited to learn more. That all sounds correct. I don't want to give too many free plugs to any specific ice cream brand, so graders. Just start dropping new ones and hope a crate arrives in the mail. Yes, I'm very excited. I don't know what the premier ACC-centric branded ice cream company is. Happy to find out if you live in North Carolina or Florida or Georgia or Massachusetts, wherever you may be. But beyond that, this is going to be a great. This is our bookend episode of the ACC. Teams perhaps bringing up the rear, but for interesting reasons. Yeah. And perhaps competing to play in the championship game, also for interesting reasons. Hey, real quick, it'd be great if you could consider subscribing to the YouTube channel down below. It really helps us out.
Also for interesting reasons. So we get a little bit from column A, a little bit from column B. Yes, the episode that we do next will be all the wild cards that are sort of in the middle. So hit follow, hit subscribe so that you don't miss any of the episodes. Again, dropping thrice weekly now.
Ooh.
Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, as we've done for years on this show. Thank you, Mitch.
Mitch? James Hetfield.
James Hetfield. Why did I say Mitch?
Yeah, I have no idea. Continue.
I'm going to catch it for that one, I'm sure. Anyway, I'll leave that in, I promise. Anyway, listen.
All right.
I am excited to get started. We do have the Lorenzo Lamas sounds here, who apparently now is getting a divorce. We haven't heard from Lamas in years.
Sure.
We start playing the drops on the show, and we find out that he's getting divorced.
It brought a light to the Lorenzo Lamas situation that I don't think he was ready for and kind of buckled under the pressure. I get it.
Did I see 6 marriages for Lamas?
Has decided to enter the life transfer portal. Once again, has filled. You hope everybody is happy and it's for the best. Divorce can be a very challenging thing. So we hope it's for the best, but yes, Lorenzo Lamas is officially back in the portal.
This is not what we intended when we said the drive for 6 all those years ago. This is a different...
Bowl eligible.
Yes, he is.
That's
this is a
what
different
your joke
version.
was. Yeah.
Altogether. So where do we want to start here? I mean, the obvious starting point with the ACC is probably Clemson, since you and I were the highest on the Clemson Tigers, but there are clearly other contenders that we want to get into here.
Yeah.
Should we start there and kind of work our way back? Does that work for you?
I would love to.
This is a Clemson team with an over-under of 9.5 wins in Las Vegas. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear 9.5? Does that feel high or low, or just given the studying that you've done?
I see 10, so I don't know. Whatever that number is, it is. But yes, it seems low. Considering the hype, the top 5 hype going into the season. Are we sure it's 9.5? You're absolutely positive.
I jotted it down before all this, but 9.5 or 10, right?
Okay.
9.5, if you want to bet over, basically means 10.
Right. That's true. Clemson win total 2025. Yeah, I'm seeing 9 here. Vegas Insider. Okay.
9.5, 10. Okay. I guess it depends where you look, but regardless, you say that feels low to you. Why?
9.5 here. Yes. Just because we know more about this team, and I suppose we could know more, and then we could come up with an opinion that is more informed. It's just a little surprising to me, given what they return. The combination of quarterback, who I think some people view Cade Klubnik as QB1 in the 26 NFL draft, and then superstar potential along the defensive line. I think if that's your starting point, no matter what the back end of your defense looks like, no matter what your pass catchers or offensive line looks like, that puts you just ahead of basically everybody in the sport. So that 9.5 number is surprising. Clemson's a fascinating team because these past few years, while they've won a bunch of games, they've won a conference title here and there, they haven't inspired the same fear in the sport as they did in the mid-20 teens. And when you looked at those rosters, 2014, 15, 16, 17, and there, it's just killers up and down, right? It's on all three levels of the defense, having Brent Venables there forever, Dabo's, what he did in evaluating, developing receivers and having a hand in finding all those guys, your T. Higginses, your Justins Ross, all those types. And then not to mention thank you. Justins Ross. Did you
pluralize Justins? Yeah, I've never heard that before.
Multiple Justins, only one of whom was a Ross.
That's right.
And then, obviously star power, your ETNs at running back, etc. It doesn't seem like they're constructed in that same obvious way top to bottom. And so they haven't been seen as like that grave a threat. This year it feels different, mostly because there seems to be so much upheaval on rosters across the sport, and there doesn't at Clemson, who they themselves obviously have been criticized for not looking at where they could improve their roster as a humongous program. So, yeah, they're fascinating, and I think more killers will emerge, like, for example, Parker and Woods along the defensive line. But I don't know, feels a little bit surprising that they seem to be looked at as the team to fear for everybody on their schedule.
It's funny you bring up
Justins Ross.
Obviously, Justins Ross. No, it's funny that when I throw out that win total, you had the same reaction that I did, which was to check other websites to make sure it's right. Because it felt low to me, too. And I'm not going to be cute about this. I wasn't cute about this the last episode. Clemson's my preseason number one.
Right.
I get where you're coming from. Your point on the last episode, I think, was valid, that they haven't necessarily done anything excellent that, in your view, would warrant being number one going into the season. You would like a little bit more of a body of work in 24 before you're willing to commit to that in 25. I would say this, though, at a minimum, I think they're better than pretty much every team on their schedule, maybe with the exception of South Carolina to close out the year.
Oh, I think they're better than South Carolina. I think they're better than everybody with the information we have right now. I think they're better than everybody.
Yeah, that's why I say maybe. I qualified. Yeah. I'm not sure, but that would be the one that I would point to because it's on the road and that game's been close the last 3 years. But look, this is a Clemson team that brings back 16, 17 starters, depending how you count them. They've got the most returning production of any team in the country. This is their best team since Trevor Lawrence left. Full stop.
Okay.
So, yeah, I agree. It does feel a little bit different. As I said again last episode, I am still taking signups for those who wish to join me on the club level.
Sure.
He was inconsistent his first full year as a starter, but definitely towards the latter half of last season started looking more like, okay, this is somebody who maybe could be picked in the first round.
Right.
Certainly in the playoff. I think this year having like a Joe Moore caliber offensive line in front of him is pretty key. Having three familiar targets out wide, which you didn't mention, Antonio Williams, Bryant Westco, TJ Moore, those guys, that should mean more production in the passing game this year. The only question I have about the offense is who the featured back is going to be. And if you go back to our intro to the season episode, Gideon Davidson is the name that I'm watching. He's a true freshman. That dude's giving me the vapors.
Okay.
I'm into Gideon Davidson. So I think all of those things taken in tandem, and then you layer on, it's going to be year 3 for Cade Klubnik with Garrett Riley. Yeah. It stands to reason that offensively, we're going to see a pretty big step forward. The wet blanket, though, if we are keeping things in terms of hotness here on the show.
Yeah.
Clemson's been prone to random disappearing acts on offense.
Okay, so the shrinkage portion, the cold water. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I wish you'd have notified me you were going to say that. I could have. I have the Costanza sound somewhere. Maybe I'll pull it up later.
Of course you do.
But like case in point, the Louisville game last year. I remember we were in our hotel room when we were up at the Michigan-Oregon game when that was going down. And you and I looked at each other and just sort of shrugged like, what the hell? What is this? What's going on with this game? So they got to get past that. I'm not sure that they fully are yet, but I think offensively, it's sort of a no-brainer that they should be taking a pretty big step forward.
Agree.
The other thing then, if I switch to defense that I would add, Tom Allen, new defensive coordinator. Upgrade? Do we agree it's an upgrade over Wes Goodwin?
Definitely upgrade. Yep.
It was just something that Dabo needed to do at this stage of the game because Clemson was good on defense, but had gotten marginally worse for 3 straight campaigns. I also know as a Penn Stater, if you passed around the hat, you could definitely collect enough donations to buy Tom Allen a first-class ticket out of State College.
Okay.
I know plenty of people who were not satisfied.
Sure.
Frankly, I was surprised by the number of Penn Staters who, in my circle anyway, were very ambivalent towards Tom Allen, despite the fact that Penn State had like a top 10 caliber defense. But he's definitely an upgrade, I think, compared to what they had.
Agree.
He's more demonstrative than his predecessor, which I think is going to fire people up.
Okay.
Definitely wears his heart on his sleeve a lot more.
Love it.
Everything that I read is that people at Clemson view this as a pretty significant move and a big deal. Like TJ Parker, Peter Woods, who you mentioned, Will Helt, who comes over, one of the 3 transfers who comes over from Purdue,
right,
along the defensive line. He's somebody who I think stands to make a pretty big impact here. Honestly, there's not a whole lot of weakness on this team. I think it's marginal improvement. I think it's a very obvious question of, can they get past some of those yips that we saw, like the one I mentioned against Louisville? Can they avoid the dumb loss? Can they avoid the tricky situation? Because there are a couple on the schedule. You know, I mean, it's not just the bookends, which are going to get, I think, a lot of the press. LSU to start, at South Carolina to finish. But in between, you're at Georgia Tech, you're SMU at home, Duke and Florida State at home, at Louisville on a Friday. That's one of those Friday games for Louisville, and that's a week after Florida State. So there are definite landmines on the schedule, but I think with what they've got coming back, and I think with what we saw down the stretch last season, I am with you. I'd be inclined to go over 9.5 if that is, in fact, what the number is.
Right. Yeah, I have them down as a 10-2 team this year. I probably right there, top 5-ish or just outside of the top 5, just because the schedule is a little bit tricky. They open with LSU, but that's at Clemson, right? That's not a neutral site game. That's a true home game,
right,
for the Tigers. Clemson gets a short week on the road, and that's after Florida State at home, who knows, and before Louisville. So that's a Friday night game. So that's short week prep and travel week as well. So that's certainly tricky, especially coming off of a loss to the Cardinals last season at home. So there's a couple landmines. We'll see what South Carolina is by the end of the year. I think the Cox have won 2 of 3 against Clemson.
Yeah, and all those games have been kind of murky and close. You know,
yeah, Lenora Sellers dragged South Carolina to that win almost literally as he was lunging for the end zone in a low-scoring game last season. And I think it was Spencer Rattler 3 years ago, the last time they won. But Clemson's in a great place, and I think they're in a great place because you don't just have to evaluate Clemson in a vacuum. You're evaluating them with what they're up against and what teams are trying to overcome. And Clemson just doesn't have the variables that other teams have. They have a very experienced offensive line. That's a huge check mark for me in terms of what I can count on with Clemson. A hugely experienced quarterback in Cade Klubnik, who, by the way, his numbers were very good last year, but I think he was a little bit safe at times. And you saw him sort of opening it up against Texas in making that game competitive. I hope we see more of that with these receivers, a new tight end, sort of, with Jake Brenningstool moving on. But he's alive. Let's be clear. He is, I think, on the Rams.
Still with us, just
still with us.
Different team, yeah.
Yes. But, or maybe the Chiefs. I don't know. He was an undrafted free agent, I believe. I would like to see that next step of confidence without any regard for what could maybe go wrong from Cade Klubnik. That's he's got to trust these guys downfield because I don't know the obvious secondary on this schedule that has the just numbers to hang with these guys at their best out wide for Clemson.
No, I think that's totally fair. And by the way, you can find a direct 1-to-1 correlation between Clemson losing confidence in its guys out wide to win those 50-50 balls and the team feeling like it was lacking as compared to the championship version of its former self.
Yeah. The other thing is
now that they've got those guys, I think that's going to go a long way.
Agree. The other thing is, and just sort of talking about how they didn't do any specific thing excellently. They may have the best duo of defensive linemen in the country, but they weren't amazing rushing the passer as a team last year. And they weren't really that incredible stopping the run. Like their tackling, wrapping up kind of stuff, it just sort of came and went too often for Clemson. So maybe that's a Tom Allen thing where he can diagnose a couple of different issues here and work with the assistants, whatever it is. There's every reason to think, especially this front seven, is going to continue to take a pretty giant step forward, which is horrible news for everybody on the Clemson schedule. So I have them down as 10-2 and in the playoff.
Yeah, I've got them down as 11-1 and in the playoff.
Okay.
Winning the ACC. My only loss I have right now at South Carolina.
Okay.
I reserve the right to undo that selection as we get a little deeper into this. But if there is a loss, I think that's the one.
Okay.
Everybody else, I feel pretty confident they're better than them. So I'm on board for 11-1. You were on board for Miami being your number 2 in the ACC. I wasn't. We can get to Pitt later in this episode. Miami also has an over-under of 9.5. They were 10-3 a year ago, won their first 9 games, lost to Georgia Tech, 28-23, to Syracuse to close out the year, 42-38, and then to Iowa State in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, 42-41. So the losses were all close, but they had 3 of them. Definitely, I think, fell a bit short of expectations last year, being so they had the number 1 overall pick on their roster in Cam Ward, but had a great offense. It was truly a matter of the defense letting them down. You can go back a couple months ago. We did an episode with Manny Navarro of The Athletic, and he talked through some of the challenges they've got on the defensive side of the ball. So that is going to be, I think, foremost as part of this conversation. But I don't think it needs any introduction that Miami is one of the teams in this contender tier. They're absolutely an ACC and a playoff contender. It's a good team with a lot of experience, and they're going to be a tough out. I was surprised at how mixed I felt going through Miami this season and trying to form some opinions, but that's neither here nor there. This is a good team. There's a reason that over-under is 9.5.
Agree. Yeah, if we're going to talk about Clemson not having the variables at important places being a reason to feel comfortable saying, yeah, Clemson's going to be really good, Miami is inserting at his best a very good quarterback, if not excellent quarterback, in Carson Beck, who has been talked about as a number 1 overall quarterback type draft pick when healthy. We'll see what his elbow looks like. You know, a torn UCL is nothing to sort of sniff at. So with all new receivers, new running back rotation, new quarterback coming off of a bad injury, new defensive coordinator, new secondary, hopefully a healthier defensive line.
That's a lot.
And still, the best of Mario Cristobal is somebody who can establish an identity, recruit really well, you know, make this a really killer roster, which it is to me. But still somebody who oversaw games that either got away from them, like Georgia Tech and Syracuse, or sort of surviving against teams that, if you're going to be my latex salesman, if you're going to be my ACC champion, we can't be going toe-to-toe for 4 full quarters against last year's Virginia Tech, all due respect, last year's Cal, the teams that they lost to, and sort of have everybody say like, oh yeah, he's got it. Like, we need to see much more boring Miami for me to feel in early to mid-July good about the Canes as like top 5-7 type team. Because last year they inserted star power. They inserted the number 1 overall pick. They helped to develop, obviously, into the number 1 overall pick in Cam Ward. Damian Martinez was ready to roll at running back. And something that's sort of nagging at me, too, as I do feel very good about Miami, is the idea that, you know, we had this conversation about Georgia, like, what do they look like without Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey? That we just sort of took them for granted.
Yep.
In the best possible way. Was it Ron Popeil, the set it and forget it?
Yeah.
That was like the rotisserie thing, right?
Yeah.
Who better than Xavier Restrepo?
Yeah.
Like 3rd and 7, we've got something for this. And he's going to catch a key pass when he's lying flat on his back on the ground, if that's what it takes. He was so dependable and such an easy target last year for Cam Ward that not having that known commodity, who absolutely could develop, but not having that going into the season with all that's new on that offense, That's a little concerning.
Well, look, there are two elements to this team that I think jump out to me. The first is Carson Beck, which you mentioned.
Yeah.
The second is defensively, which I can get into in a second.
We need to talk.
We need to talk about Corey Heatherman and the Canes defense. But as a starting point, having, I think, inarguably a top 5 line in college football sets them up pretty well.
Yeah.
I think we're looking at a lot of Mario Cristobal man ball this season. They are less proven at running back. But I think this offense sets up for, honestly, a little bit of what we saw out of Carson Beck a couple years ago at Georgia, where they would line you up, and though they could throw, and they had Brock Bowers out running down the field, sometimes split out wide, they ultimately wanted to line you up and punch you in the mouth. And we know that that's a style of football Cristobal enjoys playing. I think we're going to try to see, or he's going to try to see if that's something that works this season. The offense will still be good. I think there will also be moments this season where it ends up feeling closer than it should, or almost like they're stuck in the mud if they can't get the ground game going against better teams on their schedule. I like Carson Beck. Carson Beck's obviously one of the top 10 quarterbacks at a minimum in college football, so I don't want to sell him short, but we also don't know what the elbow is going to look like. We've heard he's healthy.
Well, it's not even just that. It was also, he saw a lot of ghosts when he was healthy last year. The line
when
wasn't
they leaned
great at
on him a
times
little
at
bit more.
Yeah.
When they leaned on him a little bit more to develop the passing game, and maybe part of that was due to the fact that Brock Bowers had left. Even still, though, it was not quite as bulletproof as I think we were used to seeing from Carson Beck.
Agree.
So that's definitely something worth noting. I think the offense probably is slower this year and not quite as dangerous. Still good, but different because the personnel is different. On the defensive side of the ball, I like Corey Heatherman. Corey Heatherman runs a 4.25. He comes down from Minnesota. You might be surprised to learn that it's more of a flexible, positionless, let's call it an attacking defense.
Sure.
And what's cool about what he does is he tends to adjust the scheme based on the situation. So in that sense, I think there's genuinely an opportunity here to take a pretty big jump forward with what Miami has back up front and in the secondary. Ruben Bain, Akeem Mesidor, David Blay, who they picked up from Louisiana Tech.
And they're deep there, too. They're deep along the defensive line. Yeah.
Heatherman's style of defense is going to require that Miami get better at communication, though.
Man, raising my hand right here. So can I.
So all of us can.
Yeah.
If you've ever been married or in a relationship,
marriage
hand
adjacent,
goes up.
Sure.
Hands right up right now. I can hold it up the entire preview if you want.
Right. We talked about this, though, when we did our Miami show. Yeah.
We did. That was a big flaw for this team last season under Lance Guidry, who you also might be surprised to learn likes running and attacking aggressive defense. Of course. He tended to put a lot of his stress on the safeties to be in the right spot. And TLDR, there were a lot of blown coverages last year. I think that demonstrate that communication was definitely lacking. So that, I think, is job one. From afar, as I report to you a Miami preview, not having seen any of the spring practices, I think they got to get the communication issues sorted out. I do think the defense will be fine. I actually think the defense gets better. So my read on Miami, defense better, offense a little bit slower and slightly worse. I do not see them beating Notre Dame in week 1. I don't see them beating Florida in week 4.
That's a Sunday night, the Notre Dame one?
Sunday night game, correct.
Yeah, Labor Day weekend. Continue.
Could see them losing to a team like a Louisville. Whoa. I do think they're losing to Pitt to close out the year because I'm just like Pitt superfan number 1 here. I've got Miami at like 9-3 or 8-4 this year.
Yeah, I get it. Just with the losable games that they put on film last year and the games they actually did lose with what they were advantaged with on offense and, as you mentioned, disadvantaged with on defense, I think the defense is going to be better. So the question is, if they have a good but not all-time Miami offense, which is what they were last year, they were the number 1 offense in America, Cam Ward, bringing back Shannon Dawson, of course, to run that offense. And if the defense is noticeably better, I don't know what that ceiling looks like, but you'd think they'd be healthier along the defensive line, experienced at linebacker. They went into the portal, especially for the back end of the secondary, made change at defensive coordinator, which a lot of people are optimistic about. So if they're a top 40 defense, say,
right,
and they're a top 20 offense, which I think is reasonable, depending on, we haven't talked about replacing their top 4 pass catchers. We talked about Xavier Restrepo, but it's also, Jacoby George, guys like that. They're going to count on youth, and especially like what Cam Ward was able to count on with how deep they were at tight end and no longer are in the same way as they were last season with Elijah Arroyo, and I think Cam McCormick has finally exhausted his eligibility.
His 9th year, yeah.
There's just a lot of questions there. So the offense is going to fall a little bit, of course, and the defense should come up. I think they're 10-2-ish again. I think there may be I think if you were going to say you feel better about Notre Dame on the road to open that season, August in South Florida, okay, that's fine. Notre Dame was playing for a national championship last year. Miami very much was not. But CJ Carr's first game starting, South Florida, okay.
Notre Dame's going to win that game.
Okay.
They're going to win that game.
They came out very impressively in a hostile environment to start the season last year against A&M. So give Marcus Freeman credit. He had that team ready to start the season.
Now, I think it could be lower scoring.
Sure.
I think it could be kind of ugly. I think if it devolves into a game like that, it benefits Notre Dame.
Sure.
But my money right now is on Notre Dame winning that game. I think they're the better team.
Okay. Miami started the season really nicely last year as well. Like we should say, they absolutely
9 straight wins.
Well, it's not just 9 straight wins. It's early on going to Gainesville in one of the probably 3 most electric environments in the sport. I don't know why I said it like that, but I stand by it. And obliterated the Gators.
Yeah. Okay.
And it wasn't a bad Florida team last year. So I don't know. I'm somewhere in that 9-3, 10-2 range, but I think they'll get enough of those key wins. The schedule sets up pretty nicely. You mentioned that Louisville game. I think they have mutual buys before that game. And so the quarterbacks faced for this Miami schedule are on the trickier side, but even still, because it's like DJ Lagway and Kevin Jennings and Kyron Jones and Miller Moss and obviously CJ Carr. We'll see what Steve Angeli and CJ Bailey and Eli Holstein are like, but it seems like the floor is pretty high in terms of quarterbacks faced in this moment. So yeah, I'm 9-3, 10-2. What's the number? What the Vegas number is? 9? I would take the over.
Okay. Yeah, I'm under, but I think it's right around the number. That's what they do.
Yeah. So here we are.
Okay.
I'm spicy!
For your consideration on any podcast player, search Solid Verbal, find us, and hit follow or subscribe. It's just that easy.
You wanted to talk about Miami.
Yes.
I want to talk about Pitt.
All right, let's talk.
If you listen to the last episode, you know that I am all in on Pitt. I've got Pitt making the ACC title game, losing to Clemson. Their over-under is 6.5. This is a team that went 7-6 last year, started 7-0, finished 0-6.
Yeah.
They ended up losing to SMU, Virginia, Clemson, at Louisville, at BC, and Toledo in the game above Sports Bowl in a game that went to 6 overtimes. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, they're right there with a MAC team. Yeah.
Here is my case for Pitt. I will get through this as quickly as I can.
I'm ready.
First off, something like 14 returning starters. Did get off to the great start last season. Petered off down the stretch for a variety of reasons, not the least of which was injuries to Eli Holstein and Des Reed. Both are back this season, as is Cade Bell, who enters now his 2nd season as Pitt's offensive coordinator. Bell was a big talking point for us coming into last year because you may recall it was the circumstance where Pat Narduzzi needed to do something about the offense. The offense had been really bad. And so he took a chance on a young coordinator from like Western Carolina, wanted to revamp the offense, went in a drastically different direction by hiring Cade Bell. What we didn't know at the time is what Pitt had with Eli Holstein, who was the quarterback transferred up from Alabama. Right. I think he's the real deal. I really do. I understand your point from our last episode that efficiency-wise wasn't always there, but he can run, he can throw. I think he's QB1 through and through. I think we can't overlook the fact that he hurt his ankle, had surgery for it this offseason, but before he got hurt, it really felt like it was starting to click for me. I think he's going to be electric, Dan. If he can stay healthy.
Okay.
I think he's going to be electric. I love the fact that Pitt has a lot of experience along their offensive line. They also need to stay healthy, which on a separate point, has been a real issue.
Oh, the
for
offensive line
Nardog.
was decimated last year. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, offensive line health at Pitt is like its own separate podcast series, not just an episode. So they got to figure that out. Nardog's got to come up with something on that front. But I like the ingredients there. With Holstein coming back, with a line that's got experience, hopefully it can stay healthy. Hopefully Desiree can stay healthy as well. That in and of itself, I think, paints a pretty interesting picture for what Pitt can be on offense this season. So that's the first reason I'm very high on the Panthers.
Okay.
The second thing is, I mentioned Desmond Reed. He's like the yin to the yang. All right. If Pitt's going to have a big year, it's going to be because Eli Holstein stays healthy and continues his development. And also because a guy like Des Reed runs for 1,500 yards or something.
Right.
Which is a lot. It's not easy to get there. But I think it's going to be those two guys powering this offense. I'd feel better about the offense if there were a clear go-to guy out wide. But I hope those guys will develop because Cade Bell's back again with both these guys. I think Pitt's going to have one of the better offenses in the conference. Maybe not the best. Maybe not even as good as I am projecting.
Right.
But I think at a baseline level, they're going to be pretty good, and they're going to be easily in the top 5 in the ACC.
How many seconds of gameplay from last year are they away from comfortably missing a bowl game? So they need every second to beat Cal, Cincinnati, and West Virginia, right?
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything you can be super proud about. You should always be proud to beat your rival in the backyard brawl in West Virginia. They go to West Virginia this year.
And you take those wins however you get them.
You take them how you can get them, of course. And they gave away the Clemson game, right? Yep. They were up late, and Cade Klubnik dragged them to a win, Clemson. So my question is, what is it about this year's team, maybe aside from, there's returning experience and the offensive line should be healthier, but the best of Eli Holstein, which I thought was so fun, and I thought the endings of these Pitt games were so fun. I had a great time watching them. But what is it about this team that was eventually with injuries, when you have injuries and your team tanks, that means your depth probably isn't where it needs to be if you are going to be Ty's latex salesman competing for the ACC championship this season.
Sure.
So if the depth isn't there, I don't see is there a clear number one receiver that you're ready to be like, this is the guy, because they lose Kanata Mumfield.
No, there isn't.
Who was that guy last year?
There isn't.
So if we're saying offensive line needs to be better and healthier, Eli Holstein needs to be better and healthier, Des Reed we know, known commodity. Up front, they're in a really good place. Did a great job stopping the run last year, but still some questions on that back end, especially against a pretty deep roster of quarterbacks on this schedule.
Well, Pitt's, in my view, loaded at linebacker, one of the stronger units in the country at linebacker, which is a good starting point. They look good in the back to me.
I'm not worried about that.
I think they look good in the back. I think they're deeper up front. I think the defense is going to be fine. The wet blanket I have about this defense is a pass rush.
Okay.
And this has been a talking point the last couple years now. The pass rush we saw last season was not the pass rush that we are used to seeing from Pitt. It hasn't been that way for a couple years running now. It feels like they need to find a way to supercharge that aspect of their defense if they want to get better. Now, this is where I tend to give Pat Narduzzi some credit.
Okay.
Because he knows how to field the defense. I'd like a little bit more pressure. A little bit more pressure on the passer, if I'm being honest about this team. Yeah. But I still tend to give him a fair amount of confidence when it comes to, can he put a defense out there that's going to be, respectable. I don't think that's going to detract from the overall project here, is what I'm saying.
I like that they have a bye before Louisville. There are a couple of stretches here. The Florida State on the road, back-to-back with Syracuse on the road. That's a travel monster situation. And then they get NC State. So that's, 3 straight games with very different styled teams, 2 of which on the road. And then finishing Notre Dame at Georgia Tech and Miami. I know you have them over Miami. I just think the run, it's a very stretchy schedule to me for Pitt. And if... Look, they had bad injury luck last season. The universe tends to even itself out. So hopefully this is a healthy team for 12 consecutive games. The non-conference isn't terrible outside of West Virginia. I don't know. I look at the lack of obvious star power on this team. And when we've seen the better Pitt offenses, when it is Kenny Pickett, whatever, he's surrounded by guys, and he makes, guys into capital G guys, however you want to phrase it. And I'm just not there with Eli Holstein yet if you're talking about one of the best two teams in the conference. I want depth. I want obvious killers. I want there to be something there for me to take a big bite out of. And right now I'm just nibbling on Pitt. That's it.
It's health and consistency.
Sure.
It's stay healthy, cut down on the turnovers. I've got Pitt at 9-3. So I'm going way over that.
I have
total.
8-4.
Yeah, I think they're a contender in the conference. They do miss both Clemson and SMU.
That is nice.
And I think the two big games to keep in mind, September 27th, which is a really big football weekend as it stands. This game's going to fly under the radar a little bit. It's Pitt hosting Louisville, which is, I think, pretty significant in the ACC. And to your point, like there are a bunch of other big games on this schedule. I just like where they stand. I like how they match up. I do think they beat Miami to close out the year. They've got that one at home. Might be the second straight.
They have
year
a
for
bye
Miami.
before Notre Dame, I believe.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that Notre Dame game yet. Where's my
by the
sound
way,
here?
by the way, I do give me 7 seconds. Notre Dame. Who does Notre Dame have before they travel to Pitt? They're going to win this game, but
is that
they have
a Navy situation.
They have Navy, so it's post option legs before playing against Pitt on
we
the
got
road.
a Bruce Feldman body blow theory.
That's it.
Possibly coming up.
Yeah.
All right, so we've done Clemson, Pitt, Miami.
Yeah.
Talk to me about SMU.
They're going to take a step back this year, and that's okay.
I agree.
I think, just mathematically, they didn't lose a single game on their ACC slate last year until they lost to Clemson barely, and they were right there to actually win the ACC. They were very quietly led by having a deeper quarterback room than most teams in the country, making that switch early on out of the Preston Stone situation into Kevin Jennings. They had experienced quality receivers in a running back room and legitimately excellent, front seven players, all of whom are now gone. And so I think Rhett Lashley is good. He wins games. He is an unbelievable fit for the Mustangs. I just think year to year in dealing with the power conference and trying to restock, and they're obviously always going to be a pretty heavy portal team, which they should be given their location. And I think they've got quality guys there. I just think year over year, even with quality guys, even with continuity in the coaching staff, I just think they're going to be merely pretty good and not able to navigate as shrewdly as they were last year.
I've got them finishing outside the top 15.
Of the ACC or the country?
Well, there's only 17 teams in the ACC.
I just am clarifying here.
We'll talk about Wake. We'll talk about Stanford a little bit later. No,
Yeah.
they're not going to. They're going to finish sixth in the conference.
They also have like a very quietly challenging non-conference schedule, playing Baylor and the Skillet game.
They do. So like I'm really mixed on SMU because I was all in on SMU last year. I think I said I had them.
You nailed it.
Potentially going 12-0. So I like this team. That was before they made the switch to Kevin Jennings, who was a total revelation last year. Clearly gives them a dynamic that they did not have with Preston Stone. He's now backed up, by the way, by Tyler Van Dyke. TVD still playing. TVD might not see the field beyond mop-up duty.
No.
My issue, my flaw finder, if I could go to Lamas for a second.
I kind of have a problem with your hair. It's bothering me.
And I said this on the last episode, but you lose Brashard Smith, and that's a big deal. They did add some pieces, Chris Johnson from Miami, TJ Harden from UCLA.
Yeah.
I'm not sure either guy is going to be able to replace the production, or the combination of guys can replace the production of Brashard Smith. They just used him so many different ways, including out of the backfield in the passing game where he caught 39 balls. Definitely something both Johnson and Harden can do. And I think that was probably the appeal of bringing them into this offense. I do trust Rhett Lashley. I like him. I think he's going to put a good offense together. It's just hard for me to believe that there's not going to be a step back here. So I'm with you on that front. And I'm also with you on the defensive side. I think we've got to see a step back there. Just given the losses in the front seven, I'm not convinced their haul of transfers is going to be able to backfill to the point where it meets last year's production.
Well, you just need to nail portal class.
You got to
after
hit all
portal
of them.
class after portal. Like, it's just, yeah.
And bear in mind, this is a top 25 defense last year. It was one of the better tackling teams in all of college football. Other than some of the issues they had in the red zone, it wasn't a unit that did a whole lot wrong. I just think now the combination with what they lose up front with a tougher schedule for sure, SMU's got to take a step back. They have to. I think what we will see from this team is that they end up playing in more shootouts this year. So they're going to be a fun watch.
Right.
Some close games last year, not a lot of shootouts. I think this year we're going to see more shootouts. 8-4. 8-4 for me with SMU.
I have, what did I write down? I wrote down 8-4 for SMU as well. And it's, they have like the interesting travel wrinkle being basically so far away from everybody. At least Stanford has Cal nearby. And vice versa. SMU has a close road game against TCU in the Skillet. And then it's across the country to Clemson, across the country to Wake Forest. Maybe they just stay out there. Those aren't back-to-back weeks. So there's that weird, interesting travel wrinkle, They come home to play Miami, then go to Boston to play BC, come home for a bye week, and then it's Louisville at home, and they go to the West Coast to play Cal. Again, they navigated it just fine last season. But I just think they were older and wiser and better equipped, at least to me in mid-July. So I have them as merely good, but just, a couple of tougher losses that, ended up being wins last year. I think Louisville was pretty close. I know Duke went to 44 overtimes, which, by the way, good for Duke, good for SMU. Those are two quality teams from last season. But I think those 50-50 games might be a little bit different given the lack of dependability here.
And by the way, I'll offer a bit of a disclaimer.
Please.
If Kevin Jennings takes a big step forward, if they're able to lean on him a little bit more, if he's able to give them, even more production, all bets could be off here. Because it's still a good team. There's still a lot of talent. I'm just, defensively, I think, is where it gets me the most. Brashard Smith, what they lose up front on defense, that's, to me, I think, the sticking point.
Look,
So
last year
under.
they basically played Clemson to a draw in year one. They could not have been more impressive in year
34-31. Yeah. And they came back in that game. It was a really impressive showing.
It looked like it was going to get ugly early with the turnovers and acquitted themselves super impressively.
And for as much as I think it's easy to look at what they did in the playoff against Penn State, 38-10, they lose on the road in State College. That game was a disaster for all involved. It was so cold.
It was negative 71 degrees.
It was ridiculous. So Penn State was a better team. Don't get me wrong. I'm just not willing to look at that and say, they're not even on the same level as a team like a Penn. I think if circumstances were different, that game would have been closer. They still would have lost.
Yeah,
but that game would have been closer.
Okay. Next team.
Louisville. 8.5 over under.
I'm taking slight under. I have them as 8-4.
Yeah. Lost at Notre Dame last year, to SMU, to Miami, to Stanford. They did win the Sun Bowl. They finished 9-4. So those are all relatively close losses. Some of them, final score maybe doesn't indicate what the game flow was like,
and weird close wins like Virginia. Yeah.
Yeah. It's another big transfer class for Louisville. This is very quickly becoming a thing for Jeff Brom. 31 new guys coming in, the biggest of which is Miller Moss, the former USC quarterback.
The benched USC quarterback. I think that's important context. Continue.
He played most of the year.
Okay. And if he were so good. Continue.
He played most of the year.
Yeah. Nearly beat Maryland. Continue.
Do you just want to take this time for yourself to
No,
dunk on USC?
I'm just filling in the blanks here. I've got my ice cream scoop out, and I'm filling in your cup of moss. Continue.
We can't do a Heat-themed episode and an ice cream-themed episode at once.
Well, that's the duality of man, Ty. You run a little hot, you run a little cold. Continue.
I think Louisville's at a good place.
Okay.
Louisville's at a good place as a program. This is the third straight year now where they've pulled in a ton of guys. And each of the previous two, Brom and his brother, Brian Brom, have done a really good job integrating them into the system. So I think you look, there is definitely an impulse to look at a team that brings in a bunch of transfers and say, wow, I don't know if they can do it. These guys have done it. They've done it. So ignore Louisville at your own peril. I think they'll be fine. What makes Louisville interesting to me, though, among teams that are at or near that upper crust of the conference, they're the ones, to me, with the widest range of results. Like, I could make a really compelling case for 7-5. I could probably make a compelling case for 10-2.
Okay.
And that, to me, is really what it comes down to for Louisville. I need to know what it's going to take for Louisville to make the big jump forward. Who's going to be that guy? Is it Isaac Brown? Is it Miller Moss? Is it somebody else? What is the X factor that is suddenly going to transform this team from a 4-loss team like we saw last year to, let's say, 10-2 in a playoff contender?
Right.
Because I like them. I just don't like them that much. And that's my issue here.
I'm with you. Yeah, I think it's star power as well. I think they're counting on, it's not just transfer, it's small school transfers. It was like, this guy was a star at Coastal Carolina, this guy was a star at Miami of Ohio, whatever. That sounds like I'm being dismissive. I'm not. I just think they're like my salt and straw team of the ACC. Yeah. That when you're saying, okay, the line of scrimmage is being completely rebuilt with transfers on both the offensive and defensive lines. Okay. It could go super well. Look, my team is doing this too. My beautiful, beautiful Oregon Ducks, I think, are starting 3 transfers along the offensive line this season. And so it can go really, really well. But if a guy gets hurt, if a couple guys get hurt, and you're dealing with a unit that's never played together and known each other for 3 weeks or something like, it just worries me a little bit in terms of me thinking you have 9-3, 10-2 type vibes. I'm not in love with Miller Moss. I'm not in love with where they are at receiver. I do really like that. It's Duke Watson and Isaac Brown in the backfield on offense.
Yeah, I'll talk about that next. I don't hate the receiver room, though.
No, I like Chris Bell, but like,
it's not going to blow the doors off you, but it's at least a veteran presence with Cullen Lacey and Chris Bell. It's not bad. It's just
but
not
Lacey missed
headline.
like 9 games last year. Okay. I want to know what, if you think they're going to run super well, then I guess that's the answer. But what is it like to go 9-3 in a major conference? I think you need to point to a like something specific that you're like, this is who we are, and we do it significantly well. And to me, it's not obvious for Louisville right now.
I do think the running game is the bigger story.
Okay.
I adore Isaac Brown.
It's great.
The first true freshman in school history to break 1,000 yards rushing last season. Ended up being ACC Freshman of the Year. Between him and Duke Watson, this is one of the better running back rooms in the country. It is. So I think Jeff Brom going hard after offensive line in the portal is significant. They did add 6 guys, who were full-time starters. I think it's clear that he wants to steer into this side of the offense.
Okay.
Miller Moss is, love him or hate him, a veteran of college football at this point. He's been around a long time. I think that was a good get for them to go out and get him, and they do have that track record for taking in transfer quarterbacks and making them better. They've done it each of the last 2 years. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see a jump from him. It wouldn't surprise me if we see a really run-heavy offense this year, leaning on a guy like an Isaac Brown and obviously Duke Watson as well. I think the offense will be fine because Louisville's pretty good at offense. The Brahms know how to do this.
Sure.
They've got a great set of linebackers, too. TJ Quinn, Stanquan Clark, Antonio Watts. I'm unclear about the line. I'm unclear about the back four. But the linebackers, at least, they're good. The real wet blanket here, though, is the schedule, Dan.
Buddy, they can lose to a Sunbelt team week 2. Your Dukes.
James Madison.
Yeah.
This is a tough schedule. They're at Miami. They're at Virginia Tech. They've got Clemson at home. They're at SMU. They close out the year, the Governor's Cup against Kentucky. Yeah. Also, the week 2 game against James Madison, which you should not sleep on. That is one of 3 Friday night games, by the way, for Louisville. I think they're good enough offensively to score on pretty much everyone. The defense, though, is going to be a limiting factor. And
okay,
I have a fair amount of confidence when it comes to the Brahms figuring out a way to integrate new pieces, but there are a lot of new pieces.
Yeah,
and it's, as we saw with Florida State a year ago, you can't always count on that just popping and working.
Oh, he's definitely a chopped coach. He's definitely like, you hand him some ingredients, you hand him Jack Plummer, he'll be like, all right, I can figure something out here. We'll get some garlic, soy, honey, ginger on Jack Plummer, and we'll make this
a lot
workable.
of garlic and honey ginger on Jack Plummer. Yeah,
but I mean, what was the number? It was like 28 out, 30 in.
I've got
something like
31 in.
31 ins and 28, 29 out. Something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
If I had a bet, I'd say 9-3.
All right.
8-4.
I have 8-4 here. Yeah.
I think they lose at Miami. I think they lose against Clemson at home. I think there's at least one other one somewhere in there. Maybe at Pitt earlier in the year. But
I mean, we're glossing over a number of these teams that are all going to go 6-6 and 7-5 and have to populate their record with wins. So, like, Boston College is going to beat one of these teams.
Sure.
Virginia Tech is going to beat one of these teams. Virginia is going to beat one of these teams. NC State's going to beat 3 of these teams. Like, somebody is going to pop up. And so I'm not there. Look, and if Miller Moss finds his groove in a new offense, in a new setting, and is able to finish games in ways that, the offenses he led at USC weren't able to do, and you can spread the blame around to multiple pieces there. But I don't know, he's the guy with the ball in his hands on all those drives.
Georgia Tech might be one of these teams that knocks some contenders off.
I'm in on Tech.
The over-under for Tech is currently 7.5.
Mm-hmm.
This was a 7-win team last season. They went 7-6. Beat Florida State in Ireland. That was a very big deal at the time. We didn't know what we were in for with Florida State, but it was a huge win for... Thank you, James.
Of course. Had to get him in there.
Lost at Syracuse. Lost at Louisville. Lost versus Notre Dame. Lost at Virginia Tech. Lost at Georgia. That crazy game to close out.
And that's also dealing second half of the season, Haynes King with a bump shoulder, missing time, and like playing, but you knew he kind of wasn't throwing more than 8.5 yards. Yeah.
I will let you vamp about Georgia Tech. All I will say is this as a means of introduction.
Sure.
If you are out there and don't care anything about ACC football, maybe you do. If you're just a fan of college football.
Yeah.
If you can't find it within yourself to be marginally fascinated with Georgia Tech this year, you are doing it wrong, my friend.
Sure.
You are doing it wrong. Maybe you're a Georgia fan. If you're a Georgia fan, I guess this goes out the window. For me personally, Tech has all the makings of a sleeper team. And the kind of team that I tend to get a little too excited.
I don't even know if people are sleeping on them after taking Georgia to 14 overtimes. Everybody was watching.
That's true, too.
Yeah.
All the ingredients, I think, are in place for this team to make a really nice run this season.
Except for the Tooch.
Well,
Except for Tyler Santucci has moved on to the Baltimore Ravens. The defensive coordinator from last year, who did a very good job pulling this defense from catastrophically bad to frisky.
Does it bother you that his replacement, Blake Gideon, who comes over from Texas,
allowed the Michael Crabtree catch?
Did allow the Michael Crabtree catch, but if there's a wet blanket here, it's the fact that he's never actually called a defense before.
No, I think his reputation is good. You don't do something until you do it. I don't know. So, yes, in an ideal world, he's called a defense somewhere smaller and is hired to Georgia Tech. Sure. But, like, Buster Faulkner was he an offensive coordinator? I know he was an analyst at Georgia.
He was another up-and-comer. I mean, I remember when they hired him, we liked that, too. We liked the potential of that. The reason I think I like this hire, you're right.
He had been an OC, to be clear, Buster Faulkner. So I misspoke. But, yes, at smaller schools.
His reputation, Blake Gideon's, does precede him, coached in the secondary.
Yeah.
Outside of the pass rush, which stunk last year for Georgia Tech, the big issue was pass defense.
Sure.
So if he applies what he's good at, he's going to have an opportunity here to make a pretty big immediate impact for this defense, as we saw last year with how Tech improved against the run. That was a point of emphasis. They've got enough talent, I think, to take a step forward. I think they can do it again this season in the back as well.
Couple things. Okay. I can't believe Haynes King still has eligibility. But great.
Haynes your way backfield, right? Haynes King, Jamal Haynes.
Yes. Losing Eric McAllister is not my favorite thing. He transfers to Auburn.
Eric Singleton?
What did I say? McAllister? He was a different receiver. Eric Singleton. Thank you. Quick on the draw, Ty. That's why you get paid the big bucks.
That's right.
But it's Eric Rivers who comes in from FIU. A couple guys from FIU coming in. And they're another school. They're counting on smaller school guys to fill in some gaps, which, put them in that salt and straw category. But also, if it's along the offensive line, I tend to trust Brent Key and Mario Cristobal, guys with that background, a little bit more, that they're going to get offensive line figured out, that they were good in-game coaches, that this team played with fire, perhaps more so than many other teams in the ACC. I I like on a certain level that they were crazy beat up on defense and still improved to the point that they improved to last season. Hopefully the university evens their situation out and they're a little bit healthier on defense. There are enough returning pieces here on both sides of the ball that they play a brand of football, and the threat of Haynes King on the ground with Jamal Haynes right there, like they're just going to be so annoying. They get a rebuilding Colorado team on the road at altitude, should be clear.
Yeah.
They get Clemson early on in this season, so maybe if Clemson is, a full war machine by later on, good to get them early. They get them at home. Otherwise, the road environment for Wake shouldn't be crazy. The road environment for Duke shouldn't be crazy. The road environment for BC shouldn't be crazy. I just think the schedule it's not easy, but it's fine. It's
sets
workable.
up well.
That's what you like to say, right?
I mean, Clemson's on the schedule, but it's at home. Virginia Tech's at home. Syracuse, who they lost to last year, at home. Pitt, who I love, at home. They've got the neutral cider against Georgia, but, we kind of take that one for what it is as a rivalry game. Here are their 5 road games, right? So you mentioned Colorado, but at Colorado, at Wake, at Duke, at NC State, at BC.
Right.
Just that in and of itself, Tech should be considered a contender because of the schedule.
And no, like Louisville had last year, no weird West Coast flights on this schedule. No Cal or Stanford here.
I think they might be better than 10 of the 12 teams in this schedule as it stands. Now, they got to stay healthy. Health was a big-time issue last year, but to the point, okay, they lose Singleton, but they backfill with Eric Rivers and Dean Patterson from FIU, which I thought was a really nice move.
Mm-hmm.
Provided there is good enough health on this team, this is a physical team that has very much embraced the mentality of the coach, Brent Key, who used to be an offensive line coach. They can score 35, 40 points a game with this offense.
Yep.
If there is an issue, it's probably the offensive line, which is down a couple guys from last year. But again, head coach, former offensive lineman, I tend to think that he can field the line out there. I still think they'll be okay up front. So I'm very, very optimistic. You factor in what they've got coming back in the backfield, the Haynes-Your-Way backfield. You factor in, I think, a defense that should be okay.
Look.
And a schedule that sets up pretty well.
They went from embarrassing and catastrophically bad on defense to merely below average, and did so with basically no pass rush.
That's right.
Only room for improvement.
Yeah.
That's the sunny way of looking at things, that if they can continue to take that step forward, if they can put a little bit of fear into Steve Angeli's eyes or whoever, they become that much more dangerous. And so you still have to buy low on this Georgia Tech defense if you feel really good about the Yellow Jackets. But otherwise, I don't know. I just see a lot of ways for them to win. And the fire with which they play, I'm in on.
The way that my contender tier stacks up, now that we've done all 6 of these teams.
Yeah.
And I know you're going to have Pitt pretty low. That's fine. For me, it goes Clemson 1, Pitt 2, and then just a smattering of teams that probably all have the same record. 8-4, 9-3, somewhere in that range. Miami, Georgia Tech, Louisville, SMU in that order.
Right.
I think you've got Clemson, Miami, and then,
I've got Clemson, Miami, a drop,
others.
Obviously, because only 2 teams can play in the championship game.
Sure.
And then I'm going to go Georgia Tech, SMU, Pitt, Louisville.
Okay.
I'm just going to go, I just, when in doubt, look at the quarterback who you most want and least want to be.
You
on
are
your
bumping
team.
Pitt up then. You bumped them up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have a coaching advantage still. The track record is still impressive for Pat Narduzzi, but I don't know. I think they're all in that 4.2 loss range.
2 teams left. Let's jump to the rebuilding tier.
Please.
Start with Wake Forest. Wake Forest is 4-8. They hired a new coach. Dave Clawson tapped out, said no mas. He's officially retired. We do have somebody new entering the conference, if that's okay with you.
A new bombshell.
A brand new bombshell is entering the villa.
I was stalling because I couldn't find the sound on time, but Jake Dickert, formerly of Wazoo, the last time he coached east of the Mississippi was in 2007 as a grad assistant for Wisconsin Stevens Point. His
Not
alma
terribly
mater.
east of the Mississippi, to be clear.
Stone's throw away. Look.
By the way, just on that note, Jake Dickert might lead the nation in week 1 or week 2 when there's a shot of him on the sidelines of like, no more Clausen. That like people are learning of that.
Oh, yeah.
Via a lower third underneath him on an ACC network broadcast. Yeah.
Really good coach. I give kudos to Wake for going out and getting a young guy with good experience and a good track record. I read like 6 Wake Forest previews. I watched a bunch of videos online. Everybody has called out the energy that he's brought to the program. You know, this is one of the tropes.
Yeah.
Really good vibes, good energy. That doesn't win you games, but it is, I think, if you're a Wake fan, refreshing to at least have good vibes after going 4-8 on back-to-back seasons.
Jake Dickert also had the quote last year, again, speaking of the energy stuff, where they tried to, somebody asked him about Oregon State and them being in like a similar boat and like banding together. And he had the quote, was like, they're not our friends. They would have left us in a heartbeat if it were up to them.
Oh, yeah.
And I
love this guy.
I appreciate the candor. He's a good coach. He's a good quote. Sign me up.
Very clearly a rebuilding situation. 33 incoming transfers. If you add them to the mix, technically, 11 starters back for Wake.
Okay. Good thing.
Technically.
Good thing.
But changing the offense, the defense is going to give up like 31 points a game. They're going to be dogs in 8 or 9 of their games this season. So it's a rebuilding thing. There are no expectations. The schedule actually sets up pretty well.
It's a good schedule.
And so I guess my burning question here is, how much can you translate that energy into? Can you hit the over? 4.5? Can you get to 6 wins and somehow, draw an inside straight your way to a bowl game? I don't know.
Okay.
But at least the energy here is something that a lot of people have gravitated towards in the early going. Now, there are issues, obviously, about the roster. I don't know how deep you want to get into Wake Forest. I've got plenty of other notes, but that's where I'm at with this team.
Yeah, Wake Forest, if they are decent, and I still have a lot of questions about using that word given where the quarterback room is in this moment and how many new faces are there, they have the advantage of being, perhaps rightfully so, immediately overlooked, right?
Sure.
That they become like the ACC look ahead this season. Maybe for good reason. Maybe they're a great value buy because they're keeping games close that they shouldn't because whoever, NC State or Virginia Tech or whoever's on their schedule is looking past them because they have Clemson or Miami or SMU, whoever. That like Wake is going to have that immediate advantage that perhaps shoulders are relaxed a little bit with teams that they're playing, early kickoffs, whatever. It doesn't seem like a big game atmosphere playing against Wake. Like if it's a home game, maybe people aren't as excited in the crowd to be going to a Wake game. If it's a road game for a team, maybe they just don't think it's that big a deal to play at Wake Forest. I like that a little bit. I don't know if it means 6 wins, but I think especially early on in the season, I think, what do they have? NC State early on, I believe.
Yeah.
Like a couple of flawed teams thinking they can just waltz in and take down a first-year coach for a team that has been up and down. I don't know. All of a sudden you're down 14-3 to Wake, and you're like, how did we get here?
Counterpoint.
I understand. The counterpoint is reality.
Counterpoint's reality. Also, Robbie Ashford is still playing.
I
he's
didn't
the
want to
quarterback.
say his name out loud, but yeah.
I saw this on the sheet here that I put together for Wake Forest. I let out an audible groan, like, "Oh no,
yeah,
not another Robbie Ashford season." But that said, okay, if
not
you're going to
another Robbie Ashford season, woof. Yeah,
exactly. If you're going to trot him out there, if he's going to be your starter. It's not the worst scenario for this because I like their running back. Damon Claiborne went for over 1,000 yards last year. Should have a pretty good line in front of him. If you stay ahead of the chains, if you focus on the ground game, that you could make that work with Robbie Ashford. You don't want him making high leverage throws. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
But in theory, Wake lining you up, trying to run it down your throat. That's an interesting zag that could be fun. I don't know how successful it's going to be, but I think that's the template if you're going to try and go with it.
I would just keep going with the slow mesh.
No,
just
it's gone, man.
Keep it going. It's the most annoying thing to play against. Yeah.
The other thing that I'll add here real quick, then I want to get to our final team, Stanford.
Yeah.
Scotty Hazelton, new defensive coordinator. You actually might be surprised by this. Scotty Hazelton wants to run an aggressive attacking defense.
Does he still have the great beard?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Aggressive attacking defense, another one. Can only do it if you got a pass rush.
Right.
Not clear to me that they do. All we know is that they're going to try and that there are some more proven playmakers in the back seven, guys like Devon Patterson, who are going to need to wear a bunch of different hats. So, curious. Not willing to fully write off Wake. They're not winning the conference. This is clearly a rebuilding thing. I don't care if they go 3-9.
Hold on. Let me write this down. They're not winning. Wake is not winning the ACC.
I know. I'm going out on a limb.
Okay.
But I like Jake Dickert.
As do I.
I like his energy. Everybody likes his energy.
Yeah. What I really want from this team is I want a very obvious offensive identity and vision, because I think that's the blueprint at Wake, a place like Wake, whatever. Like, here's what we do. Here's how we recruit around it. They don't need to run the triple, and they don't need to do something terribly crazy, but they need to be well coached, and they need to, like, okay, this is the type of system we have in place. That's it.
Last team on today's episode, Stanford Cardinal.
Yeah.
Over under here, 3.5. They went 3-9 last year. They beat Cal Poly. They had the weird upset over Syracuse, and then another weird upset at home over Louisville.
Can you build the whole plane out of weird upsets? Good question.
They're going to try.
Yeah.
They lost to everybody else, and most of them weren't close. Little did we know, Dan, the story was just getting started for Stanford. So the roster gets clobbered in the portal. Then after that, Troy Taylor gets dismissed in the spring because of an investigation into workplace complaints.
Yep.
Then the roster gets hit again, a second wave in the portal. Andrew Luck, who's now apparently running the shop.
Correct.
He names Frank Reich as the interim coach for 2025 while he looks for a permanent replacement. So this whole thing is an enormous reboot. One of the interesting stories for olds like us is that Andrew Luck is apparently in charge of this whole thing, which I don't hate. I don't know if he's any good at it. But at least he's a name that people in Stanford circles respect. Clearly was very successful in his time there. Am I losing my mind if I look at the situation with Frank Reich and I say, you could do a lot worse than that?
No, I don't think that you're losing your mind.
I kind of don't hate that situation. He was a highly respected NFL guy, kind of known as a quarterback whisperer. It sounds like he's going to steer into what they have, which is a good group of running backs, aligned with some experience, a good tight end in Sam Roush. The receivers are unproven. The quarterback's unproven, but we'll see more of the pro style stuff. As
Ben Gulbranson coming in from Oregon State, and they've got from
that's
Southern
a name
California.
I wasn't going to say. Ben Gulbranson. I can't believe he's still playing.
He's still there. Yeah.
I think the quarterback is going to be Elijah Brown, who's the redshirt freshman.
Yeah. Went to Mater Day. Yeah, he was a blue
went to
chip
Mater
guy.
Day.
Yeah.
The number 11 quarterback in the same class as Lagway and Raiola.
He played a little bit last year, but wasn't ready.
Wasn't ready. They do have Dylan Rizek, who played for UCF down the stretch last season, in addition to Ben Gulbranson, who he might be older than us at this point.
Correct.
He's been around forever. So that's not a ideal situation. I don't hate Elijah Brown, though. I'm curious to see more of him. This is a defense that has a fair amount coming back from last season. For as bad as it was.
It was terrible. Yeah.
For as bad as it was, it actually got a little better.
Well, they brought in transfers, which is not like a normal thing for Stanford. I think it was 17 or 18 transfers came in, a lot of whom from Dartmouth. Let's be clear.
A lot of whom from Dartmouth.
Yeah.
They lose David Bailey, their edge, Texas Tech, which hurts. But, if you look at the schedule, like, not a lot of proven quarterbacks on this thing, Dan.
No.
So I don't think Stanford's going to be good, but I'm going to stop short of calling it a total disaster given the circumstances, given the coach, given the fact that there's enough here to be reasonably dangerous in spots.
Yeah, 4-8, 5-7, best case scenario to me. Just because it's not that Frank Reich is a bad coach, but he has to convince this team, who is sort of in a gray area, and people have, given their pledges to see it through, at least for the short term. He's going to be gone. Yeah. You don't know who's going to be the coach. So you're in this sort of state of disarray at Stanford and uncertainty. And so Frank Reich has to go to this team and say, play your asses off. It's a hard sell. That's all.
I think he's good enough schematically to put guys in the right position. Is he a good enough motivator to use a very difficult situation and get this team to punch above its weight? That's, I think, the obvious question.
And you just need guys. You need
dudes.
ACC caliber players at every position, or high-level ACC caliber players at every position. It took Jim Harbaugh years to sort of fill out that roster. the good news long term is like Stanford is one of the handful of schools that like very clearly sells itself. That like Stanford can get high quality commitments. I think they have been based on solely the fact that you get to go to Stanford. And that's a big deal.
I'm interested to see who he's able to reel in as a coach.
Same.
You know, if this is truly a one-year thing for Frank Reich, I don't know, maybe it goes off without a hitch and they end up keeping him, but I don't expect that's going to be the case. I'm curious to see, because Andrew Luck's a name.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's any good at this, in theory, Stanford's a cool place to be. So I don't know.
How much money does Chris Peterson want? How much money could he possibly want?
Do they have that kind of money?
Stanford? Well, as a school, of course.
Yeah, but for the football team.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
Schedule's tough. And I should clarify when I say, won't be a disaster, could be good enough to be dangerous. They're over under 4.5, 3.5. I'm not sure which 4 games they're winning.
Right.
Maybe at Hawaii, maybe UVA or San Jose State or Cal. There's not a lot on. There's not a lot on here that I feel good about.
San Jose State beat Stanford last year, did they not?
They did.
Yeah.
There are 5 teams on this slate that might be top 25 teams at the start of the year. So it's not an easy road for Stanford by any stretch. I think more what I am speaking to is, like I said, last year, a lot of these losses weren't particularly close.
No.
So can they at least be dangerous? Can they be competitive in some of these games once they figure out who's playing?
Yeah.
That's more what I am looking for this year, not so much in terms of wins and losses.
Yeah, 3-9.
All right, that does it. Look, we covered some ground today, dude.
The bookends.
We did the bookends. Clemson, Miami, Pitt, Georgia Tech, Louisville, and SMU. Close things out with Wake Forest and Stanford. Write in solidverbal@gmail.com. Let us know what we got right, what we got wrong, where we should pay a little bit more attention.
Well, I mean, I'm wondering why we didn't pay attention to Notre Dame on this episode myself, but that was your decision.
That was my decision. We'll get to Notre Dame. I still haven't figured out how I'm going to piece them in.
Full 3-part preview. Notre Dame.
We can't do. People would unsubscribe.
Well, the Notre Dame story starts Cincinnati, Ohio, with Marcus Freeman.
I can't do it. I don't know what to do. We'll figure it out. I don't know. We'll get to that. But I wanted to give the ACC its due. This is the ACC proper here. Again, appreciate your feedback. Let us know your thoughts on all things ACC. We do have another episode coming up where we're going to cover the wild cards in the middle, the 9 teams that we did not have a chance to discuss today. That'll be on our next episode. So
honestly, if I don't get a crate of ice cream sent to my house at this point, what is even going on in this world of brand marketing? What is even happening? Sorry.
We are currently a pro ice cream podcast without an ice cream sponsor.
And I have lactose issues, and I'll still push through.
Got to take that lactate, man.
Oh, man. I have the lactate. It hit me when I was like 37 out of nowhere. Unbelievable. Still very pro ice cream and vodka sauce. Okay.
Verballers.com, VERBALLERS.com.
Ooh.
If you want the episodes a little bit early without the ads, bonus content, access to our Discord and the game that we're eventually going to spin up, VERBALLERS.com. You can sign up for free if you just want the updates, but if you want to further support what we do, we've got a $5 tier, $10 tier. Your support is greatly appreciated. Why don't we leave it there, Mr. Rubenstein? We will be back at you next episode talking about the remainder of this conference before we turn the page entirely and start talking all things Big 12. For that guy, Dan, for myself, Ty, thanks for bearing with us, for hanging in, for previewing one half of the ACC on this episode. We'll catch you all soon. Stay solid.
Peace.